Now, joining me on the podcast this morning is a fighter with a very extensive track record. Justin, how you doing, man?
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me on. Always love having a chat about anything fighting or anything like that. So it's pretty cool when I can sort of bounce that off with other people.
That's good to hear, man. Now, when it comes to also always doing these podcasts and these episodes, we don't really like to go off much of a script. I like to make sure I at least got my points like nailed down and do a fair bit of research for your sake and all that. And now, when I actually Googled your name, I I came up with all this information, man, and I got to admit, for the young age of 27, you have, you've definitely been, obviously, I would consider you very, very seasoned fighter, especially for the age of 27 as well, man. And I just wanted to start this off where, how did you get involved in MMA in the first place?
So basically, I started MMA and jiu-jitsu in like 2014. I've wrestled since I was a young kid, but I didn't get into the MMA side of things until around 2014 after I really started getting, I always kind of watched it here and there and sort of kept track but around then was when I sort of really started getting into the sport and was kind of like, man, it's pretty cool. I wonder if there's anywhere around where I could train or jump in or give it a go or something like that. Try some training, see if it's something that I'd like. So yeah, I jumped on Google. I was living in Mackay in North Queensland at the time. Just Googled. I was like, found a local MMA gym, and I was like, all right, and went there. Did started off just doing some jiu-jitsu, really, not really so much the MMA side of things. And after a couple of sessions of that, I was kind of like, I like this. It's pretty cool, And then I guess some of the things from wrestling kind of translated over, and I was kind of, going from, I guess, one grappling art in a sense to another. You're kind of like, okay, it's like clockwork. So I felt quite comfortable. And then I was just hooked. So I started training. And then I started doing this sort of MMA stuff as well, branching out, starting to do the striking side of things, the whole thing, putting it all together. I was doing that for about 6 months, and then had my first fight March 1st, 2014. I had my first sort of amateur fight.
Mm-hmm. Wow, man. I got to admit, by the time you had your first amateur fight, I was still in year 10 of high school. Let's think about that for a second. I mean, good for you, man.
Yeah,
so
just yesterday.
I mean, you've been fighting for competing in MMA for pretty much over 6 years now, and along the road, you had some big names, man. One, I mean, I just wanted to get into this straight away because I couldn't help but notice the title was right behind you as well. But in what is it? Yeah, you became, was it in last year? You became the Coastal Combat featherweight champion when you defeated Rodolfo Marquez. I just want you to walk me through, man. What was that like for you?
Yeah, so that was obviously start of last year. I got that in just before the whole pandemic situation kicked off, and then it kind of seemed like the fight world and everything came to a screeching halt. So, which was at the time, was pretty crazy to go from just winning my first pro title, knocking off someone like Rodolfo, and then having that momentum and being like, okay, it's going to be a big year, to just obviously everything coming to a halt. But man, it was awesome. It was awesome to get in there and share the cage with a guy who, when I started fighting, had already had so many fights. He'd already had so many fights, so much experience, been a pro for so long. So it was definitely a big step up for me, and definitely at that time, he's the most experienced person that I've shared the cage with, and is still one of the most experienced people that I've shared the cage with. But for me to go in there, I just went in there. The game plan was pretty clear to remove the jiu-jitsu out of it. He's obviously quite dangerous in that sense. You got to give him that respect there. He's dangerous across the board, but I think the initial game plan was just to not let him be on top of me and dictating the pace on the ground. Ended up going the 3 rounds with him. I hurt him a few times in the fight, but I guess looking back now in hindsight, I didn't have the, not so much experience, but I'd say the confidence, in my stand up at that time, where when I heard him, to have the confidence and the patience to be like, okay, let's back this up a bit. Let's slowly pick him apart now. And let's put him away. Instead, I rushed in a few times. He obviously shot in a takedown, got a hold of me, and kind of slowed the pace of the fight down a bit. So, even in a fight like that where I won, I got the result, won the belt, there was still those things to pick out and work on. I'm never quite coming out of a fight going, man, I killed it. That was awesome. On to the next one. There's always stuff to like take out, whether it's a win or a loss or whatever the situation is, whether it's a finish, a decision, whatever it is. There's always going to be something to take out and go, oh, I need to work on that. So obviously, yeah, that was pretty surreal. It's an experience that I'll always have, that I'm always going to remember when, I fought Rodolfo Marquez on Coastal Combat, my first ever title in the sport. So yeah, it's definitely unique.
Wow, that's for sure. So the way from when you sounded like a very, very unbiased perspective. I mean, to look at your performance and say, okay, I need to work on this, I need to work on that. What was the biggest lesson that you took away from that fight?
I think for me was just like I said, sort of that I just need to have at the time. I just needed to come. I came out of that fight thinking, I just need to be confident in my MMA game as a whole. Obviously it's no secret. I like to pressure people. I like to use my wrestling. I like to put a pace on people and use my wrestling, take them down, beat them up, break their will, make them quit, and then either take a submission or just do that for the 15 minutes, whatever it's going to be. But I mean, I know I'm a complete martial artist. Like I can be in the fight everywhere. But it's been a process for me to just build that confidence in all areas of of my game and go, I am dangerous here as well. I do have the tools here to hurt people and to to dictate the fight wherever it goes. I just need to find that confidence in myself. So I think for that fight, that was a big lesson because I mean, straight away in the fight, the first couple seconds, like I sort of stepped off to my right and switched stance to southpaw and countered with a right hook and hurt him. And then not long after that, I sort of sent him backwards with a jab, and then I hurt him with a right hook and kind of made him do the chicken dance a little bit and get all wobbly. And as I said before, I rushed in and kind of took the chance to finish the fight away from myself. Whereas since then, that was start of last year to now. Obviously, I've grown and developed so much as a fighter, where I've taken those lessons. And to be honest, man, if I were to step in the cage against the guy that fought for that belt, I'd run through him in like a minute. It wouldn't even be the same person. It wouldn't even be close, which at the end of the day is the goal. You want to keep progressing and improving that little bit and continuing on that path. But it is what it is. You just got to take the lessons for what they are and then sort of apply them moving forward. I mean, I can turn around because that fight, we fought 3 rounds. I asked for 5 rounds for the fight. He said no to 5 rounds. He only wanted to do 3 rounds. So in my mind, I was that was something else after the fight I was kind of looking at because there was a bit of a frustration from his side and that about the decision. He thought he did enough to win, and it was that. Whereas if we had those extra 2 rounds, that's off the table because when the fight ended, I got up, walked around, and was more than ready to go another 10 minutes. He had his head low, hung down, didn't look like he wanted to continue or be there, and was kind of looked disappointed to me. So, I feel like that's something else that, not that I took away from the fight, but something that I always like to apply is that I know I'm never going to lose a fight based on the physical condition that I'm in, whether it's like, my cardio and all that sort of stuff. That's something that I prided myself on before I joined freestyle, and now even more so at freestyle. Like, man, we do the work, we put in the work, and we get ready, and we're in prime condition when we get in there. I ain't losing no fight on cardio or my conditioning letting me down. You either got to put me away, or that's how it's going to be. It's not going to be like on some bullshit that's in my control.
Wow. So was this cardio that you're saying, was this something that you developed, just up into the camp, or is this something that's always been with you? Like, how did you develop this system?
Man, I think I've always had like the ability to just sort of keep going. And I was born in Johannesburg in South Africa,
And shout out to
and where I live
Johannesburg.
there, it's yeah, so it's a couple thousand, 1,000 meters above sea level there.
Yeah.
So maybe growing up there in those conditions, maybe that's sort of like just giving me a natural kind of ability to just keep pushing. But it's definitely something I'm always working at. I'm always trying to build that and improve on that. And at freestyle, when you're in that room and I'm alongside someone like Alex, who's the world champion, and he's putting on a pace and grinding and pushing it with everything that we're doing. I'm someone who came here going like, I know I can push and push and push, but when you see that guy next to you and you're dealing with him daily and you see how hard he pushes and the level that he's at, it's like, oh yeah, there's some work to do still, like we're here, we need to get to like up here. Like there's a lot more work that can be done always. So yeah, I'm thankful that, that's sort of where I'm at now.
Yeah. So obviously, shout out to Johannesburg. I've got quite a few people that I know who are from South Africa, especially Johannesburg, and they do tell me a lot about the conditions that these guys that you have to live in, and it's just something a lot about like boys who are born in sort of those countries, and it's like a very what's they say, not super tough, but it's a neighborhood where you're constantly challenged, and guys like that, such as yourself, usually are very thick-skinned, and then there's no doubt that that can be traced back to your background. But I just wanted to ask, when did you come to Australia?
Moved here in like 2007, 2006. So I've been here for quite a while now.
So my math is probably off, but how old were you at the time?
Like 14-ish, 13, 14.
And have you ever been back since?
Yeah, the last time I went back was around 2011, I believe it was.
Yeah. And what was I say now? Given that, we were just talking about earlier on about, you just won the Coastal Combat Championship before COVID and all that last year, which is, I would say, good timing at all. And then we had the pandemic sort of sweep into Australia. Now, I was looking through the articles, I was looking for the records, and then one thing I found that was quite, that had to stand out to me. Now, I'm fully aware that, we had the pandemic last year and a lot of fights got cancelled. But one thing I also noticed was that there was 4 fights in a row that were cancelled between 2020 on the November to 2021. Now, was this all because of the pandemic, or was there some issues with, was it some issues that were outside?
Yeah, so I was scheduled to fight Michael Barber, initially we were scheduled to fight sort of late 2020. The pandemic kind of pushed that back. And then we were scheduled for early sort of 2021. I think we got a couple of weeks away from the event, and then it got pushed back because of COVID. So I was like, okay. So then the third time we were scheduled to fight, the week of the fight, so I was scheduled to fight him. The week of the fight, there was a withdrawal from the Bantamweight tournament that Eternal ran because they did a double card. So basically, I then put my hand up and was like, well, if you can't, like, I'll step in, and I'll fight in that 4-man tournament, And my thought process behind it was like, I'm taking a risk because it's last minute in the week before the event, cutting a heaps of extra weight to try and get to bantamweight to be able to slot in there. But my thought process was, if there's 3 sort of high level dudes in that tournament, and there's a belt up for grabs, so I was like, I can take this opportunity now. If I'm sure they'll be able to reschedule my initial fight with Michael at some point after that. So, and obviously for him, from his side, he was very frustrated. We'd already got rescheduled because of COVID. It was like a whole process. He got very frustrated. what ended up happening, and he had his right to be frustrated. What ended up happening was I got there, began my weight cut, started off good, because weight was dropping fairly rapidly, fairly quickly, and was doing, going pretty well. I was feeling good, everything was feeling good, and then we picked it up the day of the weigh-ins again, early in the morning, to start cutting the rest. Did another, massive amount of weight, and then was down to like 60, low 63s, and so I wasn't, so I was only like another kilo or so to go, kilo and a bit maybe, to get to that limit for the tournament. And the team from the fight dietitian that I was working with, because it was such a last minute drop down a weight class, they decided to pull the plug, because the rate that I was sweating and how much weight I had to do, we just worked out that it was just going to be too taxing on my body. Eventually, it's going to be like, now you're getting into the point where your kidneys are being affected, and there's health concerns. And these guys are the best at what they do. They're professionals. So I personally, I could sit there and go, yeah, I just want to keep pushing, but at what cost? A detrimental one to myself. So that was the process. Ended up, pulling it up, got there. The other guy that I was scheduled to fight in the tournament, his team made the decision to not take the fight because of the issue of me being like just that a bit over the limit. But also, I think it was more so they didn't care that because I'd cut like 8 kilos already at that point. Like that's a lot of weight. So they didn't care about that I was like a kilo off the limit. They were worried about how big I was going to be when I rehydrated the next day. And, so they wanted to put a cap on my rehydration, but the team from the fight dietitian and my team and everyone was like, you can't do that, because then I'm going to be compromised still regardless. So, it couldn't come together. Everyone's obviously doing what's best for their fighters and for themselves, trying to like make sure everything's right, which, I wasn't upset at anyone. I took the risk. It didn't pay off. So I then, because they had the double card, that weekend, I then said, I'll still cut weight. I'll still stay at the featherweight limit, weigh in the next day for that featherweight fight, and that can still go ahead. Like I'm more than happy to do that. My team they offered even to fly Michael up still and his team and to make it still happen. It didn't end up happening. Obviously, he and I went back and forth on social media. There was there's outrage about how it all panned out. I was, I pretty much, that's understandable, but I was like public enemy number one, because, I took this gamble, didn't work out. So there's that frustration there. So we rescheduled it for Melbourne, like a couple of weeks after that, earlier this year. And then, we ended up fighting finally in Melbourne after so many, pushbacks, one being my fault and on me, and the others being, because of the COVID restrictions for travel and all that sort of stuff. So there was a few cancellations, a few pushbacks and that sort of stuff, and that was a bit frustrating. Kind of put a back burner on where I wanted to be at that point in the year, because I wanted to have already like maybe 2 fights under my belt. Ended up just having the one at that point. So, started a bit slower than usual, but at the end of the day, we got in there, we fought each other. I went to Melbourne, fought him in his hometown in front of all his friends, his family, and got the results. So it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, well, obviously you overcame a lot of adversity just to get there. I mean, that's very impressive. Now, one thing I definitely would have vouched for in terms of the weight cut. Now, I personally, I'm not going to compete anywhere myself, but I understand reading a lot about weight cuts. I've been speaking to a lot of dietitians, nutritionists about weight cuts, and they just from my perspective and based on the knowledge that I've acquired, I understand where your dietitian was coming from, especially considering you cut like 8 kilos worth of weight, which is a massive amount of your body weight. Now, someone such as yourself, when it comes to weight cutting, the reason why when you're dropping that much water, it's not entirely coming from the muscles. When you're dropping that much water, it could be coming from, either like the kidneys or a lot of loss of water coming from the head. So what happens is, when it comes to dehydrating, if you're losing water from the kidneys, it can end up in some form of like kidney failure, or it could even increase chances of stroke because of the lack of water there. And the second thing is, when it comes to the weight cuts and the day of the weigh-in, like if you're weighing the day before or you're weighing the day of, that's not enough time to rehydrate. If you've lost water from the head, from the brain area, especially from the kidneys, we don't know how long it actually takes to fully rehydrate from the brain and kidneys. But it does take, but the guess is it does take at least a few days. Then again, I don't know all the research, but when you talk about the digestion pulled from the fight, I completely understand where his perspective is coming from. But then again, I gotta admit, man, to drop down to bantamweight on short notice from your featherweight, that's quite impressive as well, considering. If you don't mind me asking, Justin, how tall are you?
5'11".
There you go. Oh, yep. So that's to drop. If you're that high, you drop down to bantamweight. That is really, really hard. And you know, I don't know many fighters who I probably even none that are your height that are even bantamweight. So, I mean, to actually attempt it is a very, very bold move on its own. But now, after hearing through all this adversity, you finally got that via unanimous decision. And then again, when I was doing a little bit of research, you took another fight on short notice against Rodrigo Costa. I just want to say, man, what was going through your head at the time? What made you want to take the fight on short notice again?
Well, so I was in shape. I came out of my fight with Michael with no injuries. I got hit with one punch the whole fight. So, pretty much was very dominant and came out of that, feeling fresh as a daisy. There was an injury so originally Jack Jenkins was scheduled to fight Muhammad Alavi in Perth to headline. Muhammad unfortunately hurt his hand. They asked me if I wanted to fight in 3 weeks' time on that card and be a replacement for Muhammad. At the time, my coaches, Joe Lopez, Alex, and Matt, and the boys, they were all over in America doing, filming Tough. So, they were still away. So initially we were like, nah, we're not going to do that because my coaches can't be there. And, I just fought. We want to give Jack the respect that he, of being the champion and do a proper camp and, get in there so he can, perform, but then after talking to my coaches and everyone and those close to me again, we kind of were like, you know what, let's take this opportunity. This is a big fight. There was some hype that built after my fight with Michael in Melbourne, because obviously Jack and I, we shared some words outside the cage after that. So, it got hyped up fairly quickly. A bunch of people were like, fans of Eternal and stuff like that were like, that's the fight that we want. And we were able to, put it together. So that was my motivation, to step up at 3 weeks notice and fight for a featherweight title. I've had short notice fights before, with a lot less notice. I've stepped in for fights 24 hours before. So from 3 weeks was a no-brainer for me. And I was already in shape, so I was I just fought. So I was kind of like, okay, let's do that. And then unfortunately, COVID struck again. There was there was a travel sort of restrictions were put in. So unfortunately, Jack couldn't travel out of Victoria. So then, Rod, being the gangster that he is, another person who's just there to fight anyone at any time, and he stepped up at short notice himself a few times as well. He stepped in, so I was kind of like, okay, well, let's do it. Let's get this fight going. And yeah, so I mean, do I regret doing that and taking that fight at short notice, and then a short notice opponent change again like that? In hindsight, I could probably sit there and go, oh man, I probably could have just been like, nah, and waited and then see what happens. Maybe this rescheduled Jack and myself. But with how everything's gone now with the lockdowns and all that sort of stuff, I feel like that was the right thing. Get another fight under my belt, regardless of the result. Get some more experience, get some more time in the cage, and so I'm not sitting on the sidelines longer than what I need to be. And again, I took so much out of that fight. I had some new things that I implemented in that fight that worked well, and that I was like, okay, that's something that I can utilize moving forward. And there was things to take out of that fight and work on and go, okay, I need to fix this, I need to change this, or I need to improve in these areas. Rod's very game, and he's got the credentials, when it comes to jiu-jitsu and his grappling and stuff like that. I knew, okay, if at any point we're in a grappling exchange, even though it's MMA, it's going to be quite dangerous, and he's threatening from everywhere. And if you give him an opportunity, he'll take it. And then, we got in there. Obviously, the fight ended up going, Rod's way. I got caught with a left hook after we sort of exchanged a bit. I stepped back, didn't get out of range, got caught with the left hook, and he ended up getting the TKO over me. But like I said, man, there was still plenty of things to take out of it that were positive in that sense as well. And he came in and did his job better than me that night. So it wasn't a case of me being too disappointed. Like, obviously you're going to be cut up after a fight for a few days and be a bit frustrated, but just back in the gym and working and looking forward to what's next. So that was kind of just, I've dealt with losses before, and I'm thankful that I have, because I don't want to get to when I'm in the UFC or at that top level. I didn't want to ever be like at that level, then experience some devastating loss and then not know how to deal with it and come back from it. You lose, you pick yourself back up, improve, listen to the people around you that you have trust and faith in, get those honest answers, those honest sort of criticisms, and then do the work and improve. So yeah, I mean, I know what my path is. I know where I'm going to be. I'm at the perfect place to do what I need to do. So yeah, it's all tracking quite nicely. But that fight with Rod, we'll see how things go. We'll see how things pan out once this sort of lockdown situation ends and everything sort of like that goes, and where we go. But if Rod and I have the chance to share the cage again, obviously that's an opportunity I'll take, and for a chance to get that one back. But if we do, we do. If we don't, we don't. But I'm not really too focused on being like, oh, I've got to get that one back. I've got to fight that guy again. I've got to beat him. I'm one of those people that just goes to my next challenge, focuses on that, and then pushes through that and continues on. So we'll see what comes. But yeah, that's my sort of thought process on that whole situation.
That's good to hear, man. I mean, as of right now, I know it's a bit of a tricky situation because over East, we got the pandemic still going on. They're getting I don't pay any attention to much these days, but it's over 1,000 cases a day. And you're currently in New South Wales right now. What's the situation like? Do you have anything booked, or are you just in a state of just waiting? What's going on?
Yeah, so I guess at the moment, everything's a bit up in the air. We're a bit in limbo. It's the same sort of thing, man. You can't pay too much attention to what they're saying on the daily. But, from what I've gathered, they said that, once they get the vaccination rates up, then things are going to open up regardless, and we're just going to track forward. But, well, I mean, we'll see. If that's the case, then obviously I'm going to be ready to fight, again this year. I'm trying to be hopeful that I'm going to get the chance to fight again this year before the year's out. Whether that's, I do know Coastal Combat's doing an event in November. So whether that's for me to defend my belt on there in November or something, I'm hopeful something's going to come up. But yeah, at the moment, it's a bit of everything's up in the air, everything's in limbo. So it's just sort of taking it day by day and seeing what's coming. So what's going to come out of this. I've got things that I've got to focus on outside of the cage. I've got a 10-month-old daughter, man. I'm thankful for this lockdown in a sense for that. There's positives to take out of it. I can spend plenty of time with her. I can watch her accomplish her own sort of things every day, and be her own person. And that's something I can't put a price on. So I mean, obviously fighting is a big part of my life. It's real important, but at the moment there's other things for me to focus on. So I guess I'm not really too frustrated about not having a fight or anything. Had I not had that fight with Rod, maybe it'd be a different story. I'd be like, holy crap, I haven't fought, for ages. What's going on? But I'm quite content at the moment with just taking it day by day. But I'm confident I'm going to have a fight before the year's out. Whether that's defending my coastal belt, whether that's Queensland opens their borders up and I'm able to fight on Eternal again. Yeah, I'll just take what comes, man. But one thing will be for sure. This time round, I'll be able to have, my coaches. I'll be able to have Joe Lopez. I'll be able to have Alex there. I'll be able to have Colby there. I'll have the boys in my corner. They'll be with me. So whoever it is that I get to share the cage with, man, it's going to be a rough night for them.
Yeah, understood, man. I mean, one thing I wanted to ask you, man, just want to say congrats on being a father. And a lot of that's definitely a big step up, man, as well. And one thing I wanted to also ask is like, how do you balance like being a dad and like being a competitive fighter?
Well, like I said, man, I'm only like 10 months into it now, but yeah, it's sort of like, to be honest, it's just doing the things that you need to do, um, without sort of question. And my partner Sarah, she's like a superhero when it comes to like me being able to go to the gym and train, while she's a full-time student studying a dual degree, and then she's like, we have a daughter, so she does a lot of, I guess, heavy lifting for me to be able to go to the gym and train, and do what I do. So it's just sort of, yeah, it's a lot of that, man. It's a lot of me having that support system around me, and having someone that makes sacrifices for me to be able to do what I do, but at the same time, I try and do the same thing. But considering everything that she's had to do just for our daughter to be here, that's a pretty crazy process, being pregnant for 9 months, giving birth, and all that sort of, and just the constant stuff that comes with that, motherhood after that. So, you know, it's easier than what people think it would be, but that's because there's someone as powerful as that doing a lot of work that isn't seen. So, it's all well and good for me to, like, go to the gym, train, and then, be with my daughter, spend time with her. And then from the outside looking in, people are like, oh man, look at that dude. He's killing it. He's a full-time fighter and he's raising a baby and doing all that. But it's not as simple as it looks. There's a lot of stuff that goes on behind the scenes, and a lot of that comes from everything that Sarah does.
Yeah, I hear you, man. Now, one thing I always preach a lot, especially fighters always tell me, is the reason why they are where they are today is because they've got such great people around them. I hear this so much. I live by the saying, your network is your net worth, and the people that you surround yourself, are the people that build you up. And if you're surrounded by people who are just like, I don't want to say losers, but people who like drain your energy all day, then you sort of like become one of them. You sort of like evolve, so you sort of like morph into your environment. And it's good when you've got all these people around you who are trying to lift you up, because that makes you generally just a better person. Now, this is the point of the podcast when we start to head towards the end. We just like to say, again, I don't believe that anybody's self-made. I believe that everybody's got like people who are surrounded by, who surround them, who are responsible for where they are today. So this is just a moment I just want to say, obviously, we've spoken about your partner, we've spoken a bit about your coaches. Would you like to, we'd like to ask if you would like to take this moment just to extend your gratitude. Is there anyone in particular if you want to thank, just before we wrap this up?
Yeah, man. So basically, you hit the nail on the head with that, man. That's the right people around you is an important thing. And I've always been pretty, privileged, whether it's my coaches, my family. I don't have people just saying, being yes men around me, just telling me everything that I want to hear. Everyone around me is brutally honest, and that's something that I always appreciate. So, so my family, my family's pretty supportive of this. Even though my mum can't watch my fights live, she can't bring herself to do it. She'll always, still support me and back me. So, my family, my coaches, guys from CMBT, guys from Enhance, those people that get behind you, those businesses that get behind you and support you. Obviously, like I said, what Sarah does for me to be able to follow my dreams and pursue this fight career is something that is so major. And I think, the biggest thing that I'm thankful for is that me doing this is going to be a way for me to teach my daughter that no matter what she wants to do, she can do it. And if she has the support of people around her, it's going to make those things easier to achieve as well, which obviously is something that, like, her mother and I, is something like we're always going to support her and push her to do what she wants to do. So I think that's something that I know now, is that, like, I'm not just doing this. I'm definitely not just doing this for myself anymore. but there's there's bigger things at stake than just winning fights and winning world titles and becoming a champion in the sport and doing all that. I'm trying to set an example for a tiny human being that I care about more than anything.
Very, very, very well spoken, Justin. Very well spoken. Now, just wanted to wrap this up, man. You mentioned earlier on that in November you have, so Coastal Combat is putting on an event. Now, is there anyone in particular who you would like to fight, or is it just you just want to fight in general?
Well, obviously, yeah, just want to fight in general. There's no like names been put forward or anything like that. I mean, I've got a few people I can look at and say, oh, I'd like to fight that person. There's some especially being a featherweight. There's a few big names there. Like there's Khan Offley from Melbourne, who's based in Melbourne at Absolute. There's Aaron Blackie, based in Queensland. Not sure what he's sort of doing. He hasn't fought for a while, so I'm not sure what's going on with him. But he's another one. Diego Pereira, he's got a fight lined up on Eternal. Former teammate of mine, really good friend of mine, someone I respect and like a lot. So he comes out of that fight with a win. Potentially, he's someone that could be put forward. So I'm right there in the mix with people. I've beaten a few big people, good people. There's sort of, I've got those names on there on my record, and I've shared the cage with a few people, but there's still some work to be done, and there's some names there for me to still add to that. So yeah, I guess we'll see what they come forward with, but there's definitely some high level sort of exciting matchups for me on the horizon.
Awesome, man. Very well spoken. All right, Justin, I just want to say that's all the time we got for right now. But one more time, man, I just want to say thank you very much, man. All the best for you and your family, and stay safe over East, man. And also, hopefully, we will see you fighting on the next Coastal Combat card in November. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you.